Maria had to come and say, okay, there are more people in the line. In Spanish, this kind of thing. By the third one, I was crying right with them. They healed themselves from cancer, from all kinds of AIDS, from every disease. Not only that, but they got themselves all in business, they got themselves successful in all these different focuses they wanted to get their information system straight about.
Wow.
There are now more millionaires created in Russia than any other place in the world each year. And I wonder how they did that. And so, when you can look right down to it, they are now establishing wellness centers in all of the rest of Siberia.
Wow, what a story.
It's just, so you look at this and think, well, what could you possibly have taught them? If you go to Aurora, near Toronto in Canada, there's a little group of doctors, some of them alternative, but nevertheless they're all bright people, and they have all been trained in holodynamics. And now the government sends them all their cases of cancer that they don't have any hope for. There's no hope at all. And they heal more than 95% so far. And these are the ones they've given up on. Chemo didn't work, nothing else worked. And yet this group of people brings these people to their full potential self. And the full potential self begins the communication with all their cells. It's just like Bakarovsky did in Russia. Bakarovsky's a researcher there, and he took a holographic picture of a fresh raspberry that was really healthy, and he projected that picture onto a tumored, diseased, dying raspberry. The tumored, diseased, dying raspberry got better.
Simply by putting a picture.
Exactly.
Wow.
So guess what happens when you get the picture of your full potential self and put it all through your body?
You become your full potential self.
And every cell of your body gets a message.
Now, you had mentioned tracking her holodynes when you were talking about the woman, and what exactly is the process of doing that?
Everything has an implicate order of growth. That's David Bohm again. His implicate order, it was really valuable. I mean, he and I used to have these conversations about how it could work. So he had this concept that everything grows according to a built-in order. So you have stages of development for humans, like kids who grow up sometimes. Kids grow up, and I'm just thinking of all the old-aged kids that haven't grown up yet. Never. So everything grows up according to a pattern. They can take a plant and basically look at the formula by which it grows out the pattern, and then put it into a computer, and the computer will literally grow the form on the computer. I think they have most of the plants on the planet have done that way. So they simulate it on the computer. And so holodynes are the same. They have an implicate order of growth. Now I know I'm a little ahead of the leading edge, but nevertheless this is the crest of learning. And we've known that for like 50 years or 40. So we've been applying that. So you can't just say to a holodyne, grow up, any more than you can say to a kid, grow up. It doesn't work, but you can introduce the kid to his full or her full potential self. And the growing process becomes much easier. It's just like this restructured water. When you get the restructured water inside your body, the cells don't have to fight anymore with the water to get it inside. It just goes inside because it's now structured in a way that makes it living water. So if you look at the food situation in the world, half the children are going to bed hungry every night. But there's really more than enough potential to grow food for everybody, even if we had 10 times the amount of people we have on the planet. If you use restructured water, we know how to grow it at 30% more volume per plant with the same amount of water. But it's living water. And when you put that into tiers, like shelves of where you put the water above and let it flow down from level to level to level, we can grow hundreds of times more food per acre of land. using living water.
You should see my garden.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
I know you're using restructured water.
I know. That's true statements. So the actual act of tracking the holodynes it sounds like it's making the person aware of their full potential self, and then that allows them to do whatever the implicate order of that process is for that
Sure.
individual.
Well, it's like if this is the holodyne, you look at it through the eyes of your full potential, and you can see its full potential. So you surround it with love, and then your full potential and its full potential have a little conversation, and you find out what you actually negotiate with it. You communicate with the holodyne directly. And you have to treat it with respect and real appreciation, because some of these holodynes have been working for centuries. See, they're actually you inherit them.
Okay.
Through your microtubules, because the sperm and the egg all have microtubules, and the memories of all your lifespan and all your ancestors' lifespan, all the holodynes are there in your microtubules. And they can do that because any photographic plate, if you put a memory in from this angle and you show it the light from that angle, it'll show that memory. But if you put it in from this angle and then show the light from that angle, it'll show that. So the memory is all recallable. So when somebody says, well, you're just a chip off the old block, well, guess what? Your grandpa used to do that. Well, guess what? You are now using the holodynes of your ancestors. So all of these holodynes are living entities. They're living information systems. They have the power to cause. So therefore, when you get one like this and you're looking through, you realize at the real holodyne's potential, you realize that it's really positive all the time. It's life, it's possibility to have a white hole effect, an updraft, real lessons to be learned from this. And the covenant is important, because the covenant is between your full potential and the full potential of others, including the full potential of the holodynes, so that the field can produce some kind of tension so that you can find the intention. And once you find the intention, you can then do extension. In other words, you can extend the intention. So therefore, the implicate order of extending the intention is to allow the holodyne to come into harmony with with its full potential first, and grow into its full potential, which is then in harmony with your full potential, which then brings the quality of consciousness of you and the holodyne into a new level of harmony and understanding and quality. It's actually a higher quality of consciousness. Now that was quite a mouthful, but
yeah, and
it's really quite simple. Nature does it all the time.
And it's really allowing us to see that that contract, if we want to call it that, was to bring a challenge about or a stress so that we could come to the solution. And
yeah,
it reminds me of what you've talked about with the terrorists? You had mentioned that a little bit earlier, and how they're able to have compassion and forgiveness for whoever they have the terrorism over, because they realize the contract. Is that what we're talking about?
I have to negotiate your language a little bit, because they don't see themselves as terrorists.
Yes.
They see themselves as liberty fighters. But anyway, so what happens is they have holodynes about this, and these holodynes are ancient. Some of them have been going on for 6,000 years, long before Moses or any of them came around. So the holodynes are already there. And it's very difficult for them to shift out of their framework, because they have all kinds of defenses for it. But when you get underneath and you use holographic glasses and you introduce them to the holographic glasses and they begin to communicate with the holodynes, they just grow like leaps and bounds. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that, but it's like...
Can you give us just an example so that our viewers can kind of understand the concept connected to the real life?
Okay. So I was part of the Soviet American Dialogues for Peace, And that's how we got in with the military leaders and got them to renegotiate from a war room mentality to a peace room mentality. And that's what started that whole thing about, well, if we're going to unfold potential, and that's really what it's about, how do we do that? And I was there for 9 years doing that with them and with all the academicians and so forth. So that worked really good collectively, because it worked first individually with the leaders. And then they helped us do it collectively with everybody. So then I became the same people who organized the Soviet-American Dialogues for Peace, organized the Israeli-Palestinian Dialogues for Peace, and invited me to be a part of that. First night we were there. We get there late. I go into the hotel room. I'm so tired, from traveling all day. And so early in the morning, 5 o'clock, we get up and we go on this little blue bus, right? And we go around the whole city and see this thing, and we see all these little black marks everywhere, the huge spray painting everywhere, and it's all blacked out. What's that? Well, those are the tears of Allah. What does that mean? Well, those are all the Palestinians that put their protests on these walls, and the Israelis come over and black paint them, so we call them the tears of Allah. Now, this is an Arab speaking, he's driving the bus. But after going all the whole day, they dropped us off on the Arab side of the city, and my hotel's over on the other side, in the Israeli side. So we're going through this, and by the way, when we first got there, the people interrogated us when we came into the country, and they let us know this is a war zone. There's no being out after 11 o'clock at night. There's no talking to an Arab. You must have your whole group with you if you're even in the presence of an Arab. And if you're out after 11 o'clock, you'll be shot on sight. It's curfew. Okay.
It's quite a reception.
Yeah. So it's about 5:30 when they dropped us off. And I'm going down this street, and 2 cars pass. Now, if you're in the Arab streets, it's about just room for 2 cars, and no people can be on the street. So I stepped into a doorway, and my group was ahead a little bit. So I stepped in and turned around. And here's a place as big as a Mervin's or something. It's a huge store. The door was just a single metal door. Walk in this place, and I look around, and there's a jar 10 feet high right next to me, and it's ancient. And I look down, here's just a counter full of ancient jewelry. Well, I forgot all about I broke all the rules that night, by the way. Anyway, forgot all about my group. I just got really interested in what's going on. This guy comes in and says, "Hi, how are you?" And he says, "Gosh, you speak good English?" And he says, "Yeah." And another guy comes up and says, "Yeah, we got a shop in L.A." And I went, "You really? Are you guys? How did you learn English?" And he says, "In prison." And he said, "When were you in prison?" "When I was 5. And he says, "When I was 6. "Well, are you guys terrorists?" "Yep." And he said, "Well, how do you feel about the Israeli occupation?" Like I'm just a blundering, just open guy, "We hate it." They both did this at the same time. And I realized, what's that? That's a collective holodyne. They're no longer in charge. So I haven't put on their holographic glasses. I simply said, "What color is it?" Now, why is that a holographic statement? Because all of these holodynes in the microtubules have color and shape, and they're entities. It's black! How big is it? It's big! And then they just got so frightened, they both, at the same time, dropped down behind the counter, this big jewelry counter, and the whole counter started shaking. So I said, well, that's interesting, so I dropped down by them. And it took me 45 minutes to an hour to get them calmed down enough where they'd even talk to me. What's the matter? They said, "It's the great beast!" Yeah? It's the holodyne. It's got real power. In my mind. And then it says, "And if you look upon it, you've lost your soul forever." No. It was not a smiling matter for them. I said, "Well, ask it what it wants." "We're not going to talk to it." It took me another half an hour or so to get him to even think about talking to it. And we finally said, "Well," how does Allah feel about the great beast?" "Well, Allah loves the great beast. So why don't you look through the eyes of Allah? Wrap yourself in the love of Allah and look through the eyes of Allah and ask this beast what it wants." So these 2 grown men peek up over the counter. It sounds funny when I say it. It was not funny. Peek over the top of this counter, and they ask, "What do you want?" Ah! And down I go again. Well, what do they want? Another 20 minutes or so. And they're just shaking with real, genuine fear. It wants to consume us. Ask it what else it wants. It wants to consume Palestine. Ask it what else it wants. It wants to consume Israel. Wait a minute. Israel? What's that? Israel? Why would it want to consume Israel? Me? You? Palestine? And why Israel? Ask it what else it wants. Oh! It wants to consume the whole world. It wants to consume all life. Why would it want that? Why do you want to consume all life? Now I go again. It wants to consume all life because life is causing so much conflict. It wants peace. And you see what we did?
Just transformed it.
Nope.
To,
We did not transform it.
or you saw a new way of seeing the picture.
Remember, this is the holodyne, right?
Uh-huh.
And it still wants to consume everything. It is not transformed.
Oh,
it
yeah.
now just recognizes what its real potential is.
I see.
The potential of peace.
Yes.
But it is not transformed yet.
I see the distinction.
So where the co-creativity
It's the
of us-
awareness.
Yes, so now they're aware. It wants peace. Peace. I said, what would the peace look like? And at that point they got what the peace of this holodyne was. The great beast was. And that was a wonderful flowing river of life. It's full of peace. It is peace. Well, they got up. They were so relieved. And they started to sing and dance and prophesy. Every foot that is, here's their words, every foot that is set upon this land was led by Allah to be here. I mean, that's from the Palestinians who got raided by the Israelis and kicked out of their home. 2,500,000 of them had to leave, and the rest are trying to be driven out now. And they're saying their feet are placed here, the Israeli feet are placed. It's like a total transformation is occurring. Now, this is the difference between the caterpillar mentality and the butterfly. So, I said, why don't you introduce the transformation hasn't taken place yet. Why don't you introduce the beast to the river of life? Yeah, one says, he's kind of tired anyway, if I can get this right. He's tired of being this beast. So they introduced him, and then they really got joyous. And after dancing, they come and pick me up, and we're dancing and dancing, and finally one walks in and says, who are you? They didn't have a clue. Who are you? I said, my name's Vernon. Vernon, that's a terrible name. That's not an Arabic name. Come with us. So they take me to the back of their shop. And here's an ancient well. It's called the Well of Faraj. It says there should be no water here. We don't know why there's water here. So it's called the Well of Faraj, and Faraj means solutions where none are evident, where none should be. Like a hidden door where it doesn't look like there's a door at all or something like that. So they dressed me up in Arabic, including one of Arafat's black and white checker things, and gave me a staff, and then they dubbed me Faraj. Your name is now Faraj. Wherever you go among the Arabs, you're part of our family. You are now named Faraj. And I said, well, okay, let's dress you guys up. And so I dressed them both up. Then I named them my Faraj brothers. We're family. Well, they were so tickled. And then I looked at my watch. It was after 11 o'clock. And I'd been with these Arab terrorists for 4 hours.
But you know holodynamics.
Exactly. And then they said to me, oh, well, it's time for you. I said, it's time for me to go. And they said, oh, well, where's your hotel? I said, I don't know. You don't know? I explained, I got there late that night and got up early in the morning. I said, it looks like a castle, though. And, oh, we know where that one is. But here we are. The first night, the second night, the third time we've been there. And one of them goes ahead, and we silently walk down, hide in the shadows, goes ahead a while, and go. One time we were standing 20 feet away, and the Israeli army marched by. They just stayed quiet. Came to this place where the road is very wide, like 5 lanes or something, and totally lighted. And there's the hotel. They walked straight across it with me, and walked into the hotel. Said, okay, we'll come again, okay? I said, sure. That was fun. In other words, we got good work done. Anyway, they started the Order of the River of Life.
And?
Every night at 11 o'clock. They couldn't make it 10 o'clock or something. It had to be at 11. They'd come and get me, and they'd drive in these little cars, and because the second night out, Minyo, who was one of the members of the Israeli-Palestinian Dialogues for Peace, she caught me going out. She said, Vernon, where are you going? You got a girl? No, but I'm going out on important work. And she said, can I come? Because, driving around a bus all day is not that exciting. And I said, well, I'll ask. I asked my Faraj brother, he said, oh, bring her along. I said, you have to not tell anybody, okay? So that night we went and we visited a little guy who, they drove down out of the Israeli section into the Arab section where there's hardly any lighting at all. And these stories can go on forever, so I'm not quite sure how long this is.
Yeah, this is just a good example of, yeah.
The next guy I went back and visited 14 years later. I'll tell you this so you can see what the results were. They came to this house. It was a very nice house for Arabs, and it had some lights on. So they came in, and here's a mother and 7 children, and they're all sitting on the couch, and they're all very frightened. And the oldest is maybe 14 or something, and then in walks a guy. He's 18, and he's built like a football player, except his hands are like this, and he's walking on one ankle and limping into the room. And he's very astute. He's very clear about being there, and he greets us and sits, and my one Faraj brother starts to talk with him, and he admits that yes, he is a terrorist, and all he wants to do is kill Israelis. He explained why. He said they shot his father without any reason, and then they captured him. And he said he turned against the Israelis, and they caught him right away. And they put him in a place in the desert that was too small to sit down in, and too small to stand up in. And they left him for 5 days and nights. Now, in the desert there, it gets very cold at night and very hot in the day. And then they tortured him first. So they broke all of his fingers, and he showed me, he could bend his fingers right back to his wrist. And then they had also broken his legs, at least his feet. And so they left him in this agonizing place, and they'd sick the dogs on him, and the dogs had bitten him here on the chest. And he said that was the worst because it wouldn't heal. But he says everything else was so painful. He says he got so hateful. I said, how big is the hate? And he says, it's bigger than the universe. And I said, that's a very good sign. And my Faraj brother looks at him and said, what do you mean a very good sign? Because his love is greater than the universe. In Arabic. And then all of a sudden, there's this slamming and this screeching of tires, and 2 or 3 vehicles, maybe 3 or 4, something like that, drove up to the house, and they slammed their doors, and they came pounding on the door. There was a gang. And I found out later they came to get some of their weapons, because they really were terrorists. And I'm right in the heart of this thing in the middle of the night. And anyway, so it took them half an hour probably to take care of those terrorists and give them the supplies they wanted and say, leave us alone. But my Faraj brothers had to go, and so did the mother, to convince the gang to just go away. And everybody was just so frightened, and the kids were and so forth. And I was just there, being present. Came back, and I said, okay, surround the black universe with your love. And ask it what it wants. And he did that. And he went, oh. And as soon as he did that, his mother and all the kids started crying. Anyway, so he worked it through so that it transformed. And my Faraj brother says, it's the river of life, yes? And so they did that. They stepped out of that whole river of death size of the universe into the river of life.
Wow.
So I went back like 14 years later and interviewed him on TV with a camera. And his words were in Arabic, but translated by my Faraj mother. I stepped out of the river of death. I asked him, what happened with you, Muhammad? And he said, I stepped out of the river of death into the river of life, and I brought my family, my friends, and my associates. And now we have our own mechanic shop.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for him. So you see, when you transform these holodynes, no matter how bad they are, no matter what history they have, it doesn't matter if the history is in your past or even in the future, you are the co-creator. Your choice makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, wow.
So that was just
inspiring
terrorists.
story.
So they're all doing that now. They learned how to do it.
And they're spreading the...
River of Life.
Yes.
All the order of the River of Life.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's great.
So,
Is there anybody that, are there any age restrictions on learning these processes, like children at a certain age, or anybody can, as long as they can understand the concepts, or?
no.
I mean, obviously, I'm thinking we all have this essence within ourselves, or we all have the full potential self, even an infant.
So is it okay if I tell you another story?
Yes.
You know about Chernobyl?
Yes.
So I was there. So they had this hospital for the children of Chernobyl. It's about 5 stories high. It is 5 stories high, and it's a block square cube. I mean, it goes on all sides of the block. They had thousands of kids in there that had leukemia and so forth left over from the explosion. So this group of holodynamics goes to the West Wing and starts to work with the children. They were the only place in the hospital that was healing them. And when the statistics came in for the doctors, they looked and said, what's this doing here? Let's go down and look. So they found out these weird people doing some weird things had to get out of there because they were weird. They didn't ask how they were doing it or anything. They just kicked them out. I was so ticked, so disgusted with them. I went down to Chernobyl itself and spent 3 months teaching the families how to heal the leukemia in the children. And here's what we taught them. First, you must put on the real glasses. You must find your full potential self, and then ask what to do. And what they ended up doing was dealing entirely with pictures. No concepts, just pictures.
And these are children that are 3, 4...
2, 1.
2, okay. And what are the results?
Same with the raspberry.
Yes.
They just started projecting onto the children their full potential self.
Yeah. That's exciting.
At that point, I started the trip over the Trans-Siberian Railroad. So that was my last trip through Russia. I didn't know that I had been injected with uranium, so I only started getting older in a hurry. So my immune system and everything started breaking down.
Even all those years later?
No,
I mean, when were you... Yeah, was this right after the accident?
This was 3 months after they injected me.
Oh, so you got injected with it as opposed to just getting the fallout from the Chernobyl? Huh.
I know when it happened, how it happened, and who did it.
And you know that there's a solution for every...
And this
You're here to...
took me 7 years to recover, but we made it.
Yeah.
But it taught me a lot of things because I had to learn things that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is where holodynamics can really be valuable. And it's not just theory, it's like this framework of reality works.
Well, just from the results you've achieved, they speak for themselves.
Pretty much. And the theory works. Just ask Nassim. He can work on the theory, the mathematics and all that. And I understand much of what he says, and also it's just like Dan Winter or Roger Penrose or...
Yeah. So What was I going to ask? Oh, for people who are interested in learning more, you have an academy that teaches courses. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's called the International Academy of Holodynamics. It's international because we're coordinating all the holodynamic things worldwide. And we're also teaching classes. The good thing is we teach them online.
So anybody can access
Anybody can
worldwide.
access. Even all our books are online, and e-books.
Oh,
So everything is there. And we have like 15 books. See, so this pile of books over here, for instance, is part of what we do.
okay.
And so the Dance of Life is probably a key book. So is this one on holodynamics. So if you look at this one, it's the beginning of it all. This is the first time we reported our results on what was happening and why we figured out, how we figured it out, and then some of the principles involved. But the dance here on, the book here on the Dance of Life, this one here goes into more of the details. It shows our relationship with nature. It shows these different forms of consciousness, like the linear consciousness, the emotional consciousness, and then the state of being, and how you can use those in a way that balances them all out if you embrace them in the state of being. And then we show some of the results. We even compare here all the other schools of thought about consciousness. There's about 11 others, and then holodynamics makes 12. They're just the basic ones, but basically you can look at it and you see how self-referencing psychology, or how Freudian psychology or psychiatry and all these different schools of thought, how they work. And then we talk about Ricky in here, the computer. And then we go into things like the war on terror and show how you apply this. And so the story I just told you is in here if you want it.
So even if somebody who does not have access to a computer, they still can...
You can just order it anyway. Any bookstore will find it for you.
Yeah.
And also these manuals, all the manuals are expansions of that, of the Dance of Life, because we show how it works in this dimension and then in this dimension throughout the sequential levels of growth, the stages of development. Like in relationships, we have a whole section in there, a whole basic one on relationships, because how you relate in a micro level in yourself and with your holodynes reflects out. If you don't love yourself and you don't talk to yourself and you just do your own linear thing, then when you get into a relationship with somebody, you can't love them either. You usually get some ideal and you think you've married the ideal, or you're relating to an ideal and the ideal is no deal. Because it's basically in love with your own holodynes and then it's not in love with a real person. You're not looking at them through real eyes, so therefore you start at the micro and then you go up. And then how you do relationships depends on what kind of a job you have and what kind of system you're belonging to. And then we get into systems dynamics. And it gets really interesting, because like corporate systems, when you get into those, would you say that the corporate systems are a little malfunctional right now?
I would say very linear.
Yeah, very linear, and look what's happening in the stock market. And what was the bailout about? Oh yeah, that's at 10 to the 39th power off.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So you're thinking of these.
A little limited.
So we have manuals on each of those things, and we show how to implement things.
Okay.
And one of the things you might be interested in is the Wellness Manifesto.
What is that?
It's 95 treatises. You know how Martin Luther did the treatises for the church, the Catholic Church? So look, this is what the Bible's teaching, and that you're not doing. You're teaching something else. Started the Protestant Revolution. Well, if you look at what's happening in science, I just took 95 of them, put it in there and said, if you're going to do wellness and treatment, if you're in the health industry, you need to know these things, because this is what science is telling us, and if you're not doing this, it's a manifesto. For instance, everything is made of information and emotion. It's a holographic universe. Everything is conscious, including diseases. And da-da-da-da, just threw it just like that. Did the same thing for the therapist, and I'm a therapist. So you have a therapist manifesto. If you're going to be in therapy, 95 treatises. I actually like that one best.
Oh, which one is that?
The Therapy Manifesto.
The Therapy Manifesto, okay.
Yeah, I'll show you here. So the Therapy Manifesto right there.
Do you have governments that are employing these? Or I wanted you to finish on your courses, and are you completed?
I was going to tell you about elves. This is kind of like...
Oh, okay.
It's a science.
The Adventure of... Okay.
Nicholas.
Yeah,
this one I did for my kids. Elves. The Adventures of Nicholas. The Grid of Agony and the Field of Love. And it says the elves are time travelers.
And what age range would that be appropriate for?
Yes.
Yes. I like the answer. Cool.
Anyway, it's just,
even us grown-ups.
I get all kinds of reports from grown-ups. Oh my, so simple, so elegant, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just for fun. However, we do teach all the holodynamic processes. So one of the processes we haven't talked about yet, can I talk about one more?
Yes, please.
Is stepping out of time.
I like this conversation.
See, according to some of the scientists, time is a containment factor on this information set of our universe. It's a time containment because it measures the rate that consciousness emerges. It measures the rate at which consciousness emerges. So consciousness wants to know how it's doing and sets time. But there are different time loops. So have you ever noticed that some people are really interested in minute timing? So we have a clock that will actually measure to a billionth of a second, but I'll bet you've never used it. Because
you're right.
You're not in that time loop. And some people don't even use our regular hourly time loop, because if you go to Hawaii, they have what they call Hawaiian time, and you get there when the essence tells you to be there, and that's an entirely different time loop than most people are looking at the clock saying they're an hour late.
Yeah.
But they don't even notice it. So you know there are different time loops within this time frame. So the interesting thing is, if the field of consciousness puts a containment factor on this information set, and we call that containment factor time, it's not really a dimension. It's a measurement of movement, growth. Okay, that being said, would it be possible to step out of time?
Yes. It's like any other containment in your little demonstration of dynes.
That's right.
What is it called? The holodynes, yes.
Yeah. So, Stephen Hawking says, time and light are inseparably connected. Light bends. Does time bend? So he bends it. I have a picture of it that I'll give you.
Oh.
So you'll be able to show his diagram of time bending.
Is that on our little jump drive? Great.
Yeah,
okay.
little push.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you look at it, it looks like pretzel. So here's a little choo-choo train, and time bends, and what do you find? That the past, the present, and the future are all running in parallel. Would it be possible then, for a conscious being, to get a little time helicopter and go into the past, and enter into all these holodynes in the past that are in your body, and actually re-experience those experiences, and do it from the real glasses, from the real state of being, and invite all the people involved in that to be at their state of being also? And could you negotiate for a transformation of all those pathologies that that particular experience handed down from generation to generation?
Yes, it's all in the present.
And would it be possible to go into the future and see how they solve all these friggin' problems, and then bring the information back and establish remediation parks, and establish electric vehicles that never have to be recharged, and establish the screens that can take, and blah, 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 blah. So we discovered how to do it. Can I tell you one story?
Yes. I'm waiting to hear.
Oh, let's see which one did I tell you. There's so many. Okay, I'll tell you one. This lady comes to our class, and she's a sexual therapist, and she can't have orgasms. She can't figure it out. So we teach her all this stuff. And she starts transforming her holodynes, and she comes and says, I'm not getting it. Because even though I know how to transform some of these holodynes, there's something else involved. So we take her into what we call Course 4, in which we look at the entire family tree and all the patterns that are handed down. And we take the helicopter and we go up and we start dealing. So she goes up to this time in the kind times of the Crusades. And the princess, the king's princess who's going on the crusade, is being told by 4 of the knights to take his daughter, who's beautiful, 16, to a safe place through this forest. Well, they're going on the crusades. So they basically gang raped her, had their way with her, and then left her in the forest because they figured they would never come back. So what it did is it created this separation of trust in men, in the woman. And that rippled down. Then she goes back a few more of those, finally she gets back 6,000 years. And she's dressed in white, and she's and there's about 100 and something young boys, all 12, around her in this big temple. And as she tunes into it, she finds out that they're there to learn how to get the power of God. Now in that particular culture, the men had the power of God and the women had to get it from the men. So she dressed up like one of the boys and went in to find out how to get it so she could get it for herself, right? She had her first menstruation period. They discovered it because they were all dressed in white.
Yep.
They stripped her naked, took out all of her female organs, and left her to die on the altar. It was so shocking for everybody in the culture, it polarized the entire culture.
I could see how she would have such a, what do you call it, the containment or over anything related to that.
Right. So she invited everybody at their fullest potential to go into what we call the place of planning, where the covenant is made, the agreements. And they were all partying because they had accomplished a great polarization game. Challenge for everybody. Male-female polarization. It's been going on for centuries. So then they agreed to go at their fullest potential back to that situation and negotiate with all the people involved to look through their real eyes and see that it was a game. And to see the lessons they had learned and to go through the entire history, right down through the knights and everything, to her situation and see the lessons everybody had learned and with appreciation transform that into their fullest potential selves now and overcome all the barriers that it hit. And it was a tremendous experience for her. It took hours. And she finally got it all worked out. So we went home, right? 2 days later, I got this call from her husband. What did you feed her? I want some. Those are his words. Because she got it.
Wow.
So in other words, you can actually do that in the past. You can transform the past. All the beliefs that we have about this stuff are the best that our ancestors could do. But all of our beliefs from all of the past say there's this much information. And it was valuable and helpful, but it can't solve the problems today. There's no way that this information is going to help us solve this problem. So in the last few years, we've learned that much more. And that's what we're doing. We're solving the problems.
Yes.
Using that information. And it's actually, it doesn't negate what was happening in the past. But it does bring us to a new level where we don't have to just consume everything, and we actually can spread our wings and see things from heights that caterpillars never could have thought of, and pollinate flowers and do all the other things that butterflies do. In other words, solve all the problems. Why not?
Yes. What is the best thing an individual can do to, we're all connected, and I'll ask this in 2 different ways, and however you choose to answer. Are governments using this on a large scale? I know, don't say large, okay. Are governments using this for some of the biggest, the hunger and the sustainability and, H1N1 and, all these global challenges we're facing? Or can I, in my own self, knowing that I am connected to my family, my community, my human kind, think or be in a certain way that's going to influence all of those processes, the governments and the, the micro and the macro, it's integrally, how do you say it, integrally webbed together. So what I do affects the whole. We don't have to have rely on anybody else here.
There are no losers. God didn't make any junk. In other words, no matter how bad your life, no matter how rough it is, no matter if half the children are hungry, no matter if people are dying by the hundreds of thousands, no matter if the Ross Shelf collapses and creates that mile-high tsunami and wipes out 60% of the human population, which, by the way, it's cracking. Part of Tucson's going to be underwater. If it works that way. Doesn't matter. We planned it. So if you're supposed to do something, guess who knows?
My full potential self.
Right. So, people say, oh, you're so wise, Vern, oh, you're so blah, blah, blah. And say, look, the only reason you can recognize that is because you got it in yourself. So, what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. I'm just like you. I just happen to have this fun attitude about the whole thing. Ooh, there's a really good problem. Let's see what the solution to that one is, and go for it.
Have you or any of the academy gone into grade schools, high schools, to teach this as curriculum to all children?
Not as curriculum. But we certainly taught it to all children. But does that mean every child on the planet is for all? Or does it mean people are already creating their own curriculums for it?
Yes, and as I change within myself, everyone changes.
Yes, and so if you have like an information system that you're already in, and you change, the first thing they'll try to do is kill you. Because that's what the caterpillar cells do to the imaginal cells. They give them resistance. But because you're so... If we put in the caterpillar cell thing, the imaginal cells are so reproductive and so positive and so effective, they can't be stopped. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening on the planet. The people who are doing the transition can't be stopped. That's why 60% of Germany has turned solar already. And miracle after miracle, even Chicago, the city center, has solar cells on the building and a garden on the roof. Well, and they have a reflector for their garden down below, so the roof's sun can give the sun down to the garden below. Now, I would say that's a sign of life, intelligence.
Yeah.
And on it goes. Wait till you see what we're doing with the wave, with the Gulf Stream.
The Gulf Stream.
Mm-hmm. Do you know that the Gulf Stream flows forever? How much energy do you think that could...
It's a big loop, right?
Yeah, all over the world.
Uh-huh.
Now, wouldn't that be valuable?
Yeah.
And where do you see what we're doing with garbage? So we're going to make sure that the future generations have resources. We're harvesting all the resources and showing everybody how to do it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't look at it. I sure hope I asked the questions they were wanting me to ask.
Go through it.
Let me just... tell me if you didn't touch on any of these, because I think you did. We talked about the micro and the macro structure. How does the information system link to multiple dimensions of consciousness and the multiple dimension of reality? And we talked about multiple dimensions of consciousness, the thinker, the wave. We talked about that.
Actually, in those multiple dimensions, we hardly even touched on it.
Okay, can you...
But
yes, so let me ask you the question, in case they want to, it's so wonderful to have an editing team. Yes, can you tell us more about the multiple dimensions of consciousness? What is it and how does it play a role in holodynamics?
Yes, because we are multi-dimensional beings. And the one who knows all the answers to all those dimensions is your full potential self. I could explain it to your left brain, but with its limited capacity, it'd never get it. They create a little belief system in here that's just a closed little belief system, and then project that on everybody around it, and then take credit for everything. But it's like that's not how it works. Because even though you may have a 3 brain, or 4 brain even, it doesn't, it's like, I'm trying to find the right word, because it's like, it doesn't mean that you can have a 10 brain until you choose to develop the 10 brain perspective. It doesn't mean that 10 brains or more are not there, because they are. They're there all the time. And the people who can sense it know that that's more real than these images inside the holodynamics. No, not more real, but it's more, it's
complete, maybe?
It's real. So if you get My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell again, he says, if you're in a certain framework, it's difficult for you to get out of that framework enough to see the next framework. So if you take our entire universe and say it's an information set, it's really difficult for anybody who's born and raised and taught in that information set to realize that that information set is one of many sets. So there may be other universes that deal differently. Their time frames may be different, or some of the other containment factors. And it would be very difficult for us to even imagine that. So to imagine hyperspace, which would be then a source to the absolute field of manifest reality, or the absolute field of manifest consciousness, which is unmanifest physically here. So it's called unmanifest physical reality. So that's hyperspace, is an unmanifest physical reality. But for us to even imagine that, most people just say, forget it, it's hokum pokum, or voodoo doo-doo, or whatever. So that's understandable, but it's totally irresponsible. It's immature and it's deadly. Like lemmings that go over the cliff because of their collective consciousness. Mm-hmm. We are going over a cliff. And it's time that somebody at least rang the bell. And so this is the conclusion of scientists who are not stuck in that 10 to the 39th power belief system over there, in that religious system. And it says there are at least 10 dimensions. And others say, enfolded in those dimensions that we are not aware of are the solutions to everything we're facing. So most people don't know that you can travel in time. They say, oh yeah, it's Hollywood stuff. But Hollywood gets some of its stuff from real experiences by people. And so therefore, we know that people have done that, and furthermore we can teach them how to do it, and then they really do it. When you get right down to the proof of the pudding, just go ahead and taste it and do it.
Yeah.
Stop believing that some things are just theory, and stop believing that you got everything figured out but you don't know anything or whatever. Just get with what's real and ask your full potential to guide you, and you'll see for yourself.
So the 10 dimensions, did that come from any particular...
It's
did that
called
originally?
At least 10.
At least 10, okay. Is that something that one particular being, person, came up with initially, or is that by...
No, that's long research and study and everything else.
Okay.
And that's the conclusion. And Paul Townsend is one of the leading physical theorists in the world. Mm-hmm. Physicists, you know. Mm-hmm. So you look at that and you say, that's his conclusion.
And then hyperspace...
By the way, I put pictures of that in there for you.
Oh, good.
So
Great.
you see that.
Uh-huh. And then, so the core essence of hyperspace is consciousness.
Yeah. Consciousness itself.
Mm-hmm.
So we started classes by saying this is a conversation about consciousness.
Yeah. Another question I have here for you is, what is the relationship between holographic projection and hyperspatial counterpart? Did we talk about holographic projection?
Holographic projections, we've talked about holograms.
Uh-huh.
And then how you can project those, like onto the Raspberry.
Okay, yes.
So you can take complex and project it into less complex.
Yes.
Which is an interesting principle. Then the complex manifests itself through the less complex. And that's how consciousness is doing it here.
Okay.
So you say, okay, well, what else? Well, holographic projection is what that's about. That's why they find the little spinners, because they're projecting. By the way, your DNA, when you make your DNA, when it's growing, two spinners appear from hyperspace, and the double helix feedback loop goes to those two spinners and bridges. Then two more appear here, or the same two, I'm not sure which. Goes there and bridges. Now there are a billion bridges in a DNA code. Who's doing? Who's spinning that one?
Yeah.
And your DNA is different than mine and his and so forth.
That's where they bring the miracle word in.
Yeah, either that or
consciousness.
Either that is co-creative consciousness.
Yes.
Individuation.
Yeah.
It seems to be built into everything. No two leaves are alike. No two. Even twins are not alike. They are alike, but they're always different. They're unique.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to recap, the hyperspatial counterpart is the part of us that is our full potential self, that is not manifest in our three-dimensional world.
What?
Is that, or
what?
I mean, our little reality that we can see with our eyes?
I'm sorry. If it wasn't for your...
It can be a real tongue twister to try to talk these concepts. So.
If it wasn't for your real full potential self, you wouldn't have form. In other words, it's so intimate that the form you have is projected by your full potential self. And if she were ever to leave you, you would just be 5 trillion little life forms sitting there on the floor.
Okay. Yeah, that's something to wrap my head around. Okay, so we talked about holodynes, microtubules, what their job is, what dictates the microtubules, how do practitioners access different dimensions of consciousness. Yeah, we talked about that. I was on the beach.
Well, your full potential self can help you answer any of these questions anyway.
Yeah. We talked about imaginal cells. Just want to make sure I got everything. Tracking the holodynes, how they can help people in their lives. Link between religion and... Okay, did we answer this? I know we talked about religion. What is the link between religion and the reality observed from holodynamics science? Does that make sense? The link between religion.
Holodynamic science explains that it's not a mystery. And it's not a miracle. Those are labels put on it by linear thinkers. The whole thing is understandable. Guess who knows?
Our full potential self.
So everybody has their own source.
Yeah.
And they'll have their own twist on it, because when the information comes from hyperspace, it comes in through your microtubules in the disorganized or unorganized water molecules inside among the waves. So there's these portions, as we found out on our virtual reality microtubule, that there's areas inside, and that's where the information comes out and spins into its mature form as it's transformed. So it's got to match holodynes. So if you believe that God is this kind of God or that kind of God, guess what the message will come through? Your kind of God, usually. Now, if you're skeptical, that's good, as long as you're an open skeptic. So everybody has this analytical part of them. As long as it's open. If it closes up, you've said, I'm dying now. But if it's open, it can take the concept of God you've been taught, and then this new information coming from your full potential self, which will improve the quality of your relationship with God, or with any of your religious belief systems. So you actually could make a better Buddhist or a better Catholic. I've had a Buddhist monk tell me this is the best course in Buddhism he has ever seen. But the rector of the Catholic Church for Western United States said the same thing about Catholicism. He said, you are teaching real Catholicism here. His companion in the course was a hooker from Las Vegas. Like you team up. And he said, I have understood now what the hookers really are all about. And my companion was one of the most beautiful beings I have ever met. That from a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
Going, holy moly!
You got perfectly matched up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
talk about two different,
Poles.
total different paradigms. Yeah.
So you see, that's what happens in these courses. That's why we teach on-site courses, so people can get to know each other. And we have study groups through it past, after, called holons. It's like a cell within the whole thing. So the field of consciousness begins to grow within the cells. And there's the great adventures come out of those holons. So we have a free one every Monday night. You can find that out in holodynamics.com. You just go to holons. And Mark McFeely leads that one. He's just a really good guy and a master at it. But he's also really there for the people.
That's an online.
It's yeah, just do it on the phone.
Oh, okay.
And you can get that. You can get the number and stuff from the online website.
Yes. Great.
We're putting this all on iPods, and we're doing the audio books.
Yeah.
We're getting those done. We got the first one done, and so on and on it goes. So you'll be able to listen to this in the car or on your iPod or wherever you want.
Yeah. Wow. There's no way that it can't get to everybody the way that our world is set up right now. With the internet, and we've got more options with communication than we've ever had in the past.
Isn't that exciting?
To spread this kind of information. Yeah. Important information. Okay, I think we pretty much, we talked about the global pollution situation, that we won't survive unless we approach this from a whole dynamic, and some of the findings, governments, private projects, people that are working in villages, medical profession. Oh, I'm getting most of it, good. I think I asked you this one already. For those who are unaware of, holodynamics, what is the best thing they can do? Yes, you answered that one. And severity of climate change, the best thing an individual out there can do to help. I think that was kind of the same answer, wasn't it?
Well, what would happen if everybody planted a garden? Read the Anastasia series.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar.
So, if everybody planted a garden, what would happen to the planet?
Garden of Eden. We'd be the planet of Eden. We'd be self-sufficient and nourishing ourselves.
Did you notice that my plants out there seem like they're all flowers? But there's vegetables mixed in with them all the time.
They're looking very green and healthy, yes.
So the plan is to get the flowers and the beauty, but also get the vegetables.
And the beauty attracts the butterflies, the bees, the pollinators. I mean, they all work together.
Where do you see, next time you come, where do you see this back porch?
You've got a plan.
Well, this is a planet.
Yes, it is a planet. You might as well plan it. Yes. Training we talked about, and age. Do you have any closing thoughts you would like to share with our viewers?
It starts with you. If there's going to be any change in this planet, in our collective consciousness, all you have to do is make the change in yourself. First step is to get to know who you really are, and the other steps are just follow naturally.
Beautiful. Well said. Wow.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you spending this time to share this very important information with us and our many viewers out there.
It's an honor.
Yes, and I wish you all the best as you continue to spread this around the world, and all the exciting projects that are coming out of people awakening to who they really are, their full potential selves. Thank you.
It's an honor.
Honor for me too.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. I'm up and ready and
Here we go.
doing it. I don't even know how long.